Hi, my name is David Booth. I'm with Coy's Vessel Services and welcome to our how-to video series. Hello, welcome. My name is David. I'm with Coy's Vessel Services and I'm going to show you today how to disassemble and reassemble a carburetor for this two-stroke Mariner 5-horse. This engine is very similar to the Yamaha. It's actually manufactured by Yamaha for Mariner. Right here you have a release for the engine cover. Let's go ahead and pull that off. I'll just set this off to the side so I've got room to work. Alright, first thing that you're going to want to do is, I have it on the workbench here so for illustration purposes. You're going to pull the two screws off of the air cleaner cover. Let me grab the screwdriver here. Just take these two screws. Set it off to the side. And then you're going to need to release the throttle cable right here, the throttle cable linkage, so that way you're able to remove the carburetor. So there's just one retaining screw for the throttle. Just loosen it up, you don't have to pull it all the way out because it will just slide. The cable will just slide right out. A lot of times these cables do get frayed on the ends, so it's not a big deal. It just makes it a little bit harder to thread the cable back through the carburetor. And then right on the back side of the carburetor right here, you have your fuel line. You want to take the fuel line off as well. Do that just using a flathead screwdriver. Okay. Then the next step is you remove the carburetor mounting bolts. There's only two of them that you need to remove to actually get the carburetor off. There's one on the top here and one on the bottom over here. So those are just done with a 10mm wrench. There are flat washers behind the nuts as well that you just want to make sure you don't drop because it can be a little bit difficult to find. This side is over here. There's the carburetor. The clearances are a little bit tight, but if you look at the back side of the carburetor, you can see, let me come around here and show you. You can see that the mounting holes, this one's notched and this one's kind of grooved, so that way you can slip it into the engine. Okay. Here's the choke. this particular engine does not have the choke lever on it, so what I have to do is I just have to pull the engine cover off whenever I start it up when it's cold, and just flip the choke. Here's the bowl to the carb. This is the mounting plate where the carburetor mounts to the engine. Here's your fuel intake, fuel input, and right in here is your diaphragm and gaskets and whatnot for your fuel your input for your fuel. On here, this is your throttle and also your idle adjustment screw, and right here is your air fuel screw. Okay, so those are the major components of the carburetor. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and show you the disassembly and reassembly of the carburetor. Okay, now if you just pull this off of your boat running, then you're going to have fuel in your float bowl. I always run my engines, my two-stroke engines, out of fuel. Actually, any of my outboards, I run them out of fuel before I store them. So let me go ahead and get this coming along here. Now, I use just a regular flathead, common head screwdriver, however you want to call it, pretty much for everything. These are very simple to work on and can make your life a lot easier if you know how to rebuild your carburetor. Especially with outboards, they're notorious for having crud in the carburetor. Now you've only got 4 screws on the bottom. This screw is a drain for the bowl. So I know that my carburetor does not have fuel in it right now. But if your carburetor does have fuel in it, I would suggest just opening that drain up and letting that fuel out of the bowl before you start opening it up. It can get a little bit messy, get on your hands. If you got any cuts, it'll hurt pretty bad. So I've loosened up all those screws, and then bowl comes off, and then you've got your gasket for the bowl right here. It's important that this is a clean seal, and right here you have the float. I'm just going to set this off to the side as well. Now, let me show you these components. Right here's your float, and you can see that this is actually improperly adjusted. This needs to be flat. The float needs to be flat to the carburetor housing. But what you need to do to make sure that you have all the components cleaned properly is there's a little retaining pin that goes through here that your float kind of pivots on. So you just kind of knock that pin out. I just do it by hand. Give it a little wiggle. You can see it starts to come out. Just give that a little tug. And then be careful when you're pulling this out, because you have a little pin right there. Set this down. Make sure you don't lose this. It can be difficult to find in your shop. Pull your pin off right here, and you've got your flow. Okay, going back to the carburetor, looking at it under here, just make sure that you don't have any debris inside of the carburetor. And then you've got your jet right here that you want to make sure is flowing freely. Then you have this cover right on top here. This is where your fuel actually comes into the carburetor and is vacuumed into the carburetor through your vacuum fuel pump, if you will. Then your diaphragm is right in here inside the fuel pickup. This is where a lot of your debris is going to gonna accumulate on the inside of here. Again, just 4 more screws. Gets that out. Now when you're taking this apart, use caution because there is a spring and a cap inside of here. Try to make sure that you don't lose any of these screws because you could be in trouble if you're missing something. Trying to put it back together. Okay. This outside is just pretty much just a cap. So I just set that off to the side. And then you've got your first gasket there. Now inside of here is where you're going to get most of your debris. Right in these 2 chambers. This chamber is where you're going to get most of the debris because this is where your fuel flows in and this is where the air actually pulls the fuel in. So this little tiny hole on the top is where the air comes in. Holes in the bottom is where the fuel comes in. So a lot of crud and debris will build up in here. Now taking this off, as you can see, there's the diaphragm right in here, and you've got your spring and your cap. It's imperative you don't lose any of these parts, so let me go back to the other side of the bench. Set them down in an organized manner. Take these 2 off. Take the gasket off. Now you can see inside the carburetor. This is your fuel pump pickup. Goes into there. That's where the vacuum is. And then you have another hole right here that leads up to the top. Okay, that's where your where the carburetor is actually going to take the fuel in, and then it goes down through your jet and into the bowl to fill the bowl up. Okay, that's pretty much all the components of the carburetor. All I'm going to do is just follow the same steps that I just showed you in reverse and put it all back together. What you're going to want to do is you're going to make sure that all of the orifices, all the little holes are free of debris, and you can kind of blow through them pretty smoothly, like with a little bit of resistance. You can use compressed air, or I always use my mouth, just as long as I make sure it's clean from fuel or any cleaner. I use my mouth so that way I can feel the pressure. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and do the reassembly on this carburetor. They're pretty simple. Your carburetor kit's going to include both of these gaskets here, a new float, a new pin, a new retaining pin for the float bowl, or for the float itself, and also a gasket for the mounting plate. So let me go ahead and get this all back together. The great part about these is that they pretty much only go together one way. So you know, as long as it goes back together without forcing anything, you know that you've done it properly. I always put the cap on the spring towards the gasket, so that way you don't cut your gasket open. Okay, now this part's a little bit tricky. You just kind of have to put the 2 pieces together, like that. Now, because there's a spring in there, the 2 parts can come apart pretty easily, so you just want to make sure that you hold on to them so they don't go anywhere. And this cap goes on with the lettering facing towards the top of the carburetor. in. What I do is I always just run the screws down until they're just touching the surface of the seat of the screw, just to avoid over tightening anything. You just tighten them all down to where they're snug, and then go back and tighten them up again to the proper tension. You don't want to over torque these screws, because if you smash your gasket material, it can cause leaking, and any fuel leaks in the boat is a fire hazard, and that's the last thing you want on a boat is a fire. It's not like in a car where you can just jump out and pull over on the side of the highway. If you're in trouble on a boat, you're either swimming or your boat's sinking, so we don't want any of that to happen. And a lot of times on these John boats or these small little outboard flats boats, I mean, you're not required by the Coast Guard to have a fire extinguisher on them, so I mean, most people really just don't carry them. So now I've got the diaphragm and fuel chamber put back on. Now you just hang this back onto here, hang on your pin there. You drop it back into the little hole, like that. Put your retaining pin back in. Just kind of got to wiggle a little bit, find the right hole. Then it goes in, perfect. Now, this is supposed to be, your float is supposed to be pretty much parallel to your carburetor housing. If it's not, the engine will not run properly. For instance, right now, if this is in a position like this on the engine, so with it being too low, you're not going to have enough fuel. If it's too high, you're going to have too much fuel and flood the carburetor. So what you do is you just kind of give it a little push until it's pretty much level. I mean, it's not exactly a precision, but just as long as by eyeball it looks good, you'll be good. So then I just put my float bowl back on, the gasket there, bowl goes on, just like that. Make sure everything's lined up, feels good. There's no binding or anything. If there's binding, then you've got something out of line. Everything goes back together very nice and easy. Again, I do the same thing, just run the screws down to where they're snug, and then go back through and tighten them up. So if you're spending a few minutes just to watch this video, it can save you easily $100 by having a mechanic come out to your shop or bringing your engine to the mechanic to have them work on it. I'll show you, it's pretty simple to do. Okay. It's tight, that one's tight. I don't know if you can tell how much force I'm putting on these screws, but I'm not putting a lot. The gaskets are rubber, and they will smash and come apart. So this is the carburetor, back reassembled. There's not very many parts to it, so you can tell it's pretty straightforward. Now the trickiest part is, especially when you're in a situation where I am, where I have a really frayed throttle cable. I found with a lot of experimenting that it actually works a little bit easier if I do put the carburetor back on the engine before I put the throttle cable back in. Okay, now it's back on there. And then you can just take your washer and then your nut on the back side, put them back in. Again, doing the same thing, just get it started and running down finger tight. And then you're going to take your wrench again, top one's a little bit more tricky than the bottom one because you have your housing in the way. The diaphragm housing. So what I like to do is I like to use my screwdriver just to kind of hold the nut straight, because my fingers are too big to fit in the hole. And once I get it straightened out, just kind of wiggle it with my finger until it gets started. Does make it a little bit more difficult trying to do it to please the camera. Okay, come on. Almost had ya. Got my wrench again. Just tighten the housing back down to the carburetor not included. Now this is the improper way to store an engine on its side. You do not want to do that. Now I know I don't have any fuel in here, and I'm just doing the carburetor rebuild right now. So as soon as I'm done with this carburetor rebuild, it will be stored back in an upright position. It just makes it a lot easier to keep the debris out of the carburetor if you keep it in an upright position. Alright, that's nice and snug. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and work on getting this throttle cable back on. Actually, let me just go ahead and put my fuel line back on first, just while I have the clearance. These little two-stroke engines are pretty easy to work on. Use the end of the screwdriver to slide my fuel line back on. There we go. Okay. Now what I usually use, because it does make it a bit more difficult to put this throttle cable back on once it's frayed, is I use a pair of needle nose pliers. I grab the side that's pretty good, and then I take another pair of pliers and just twist in the same orientation that the braid is on the cable. And as I twist, I kind of readjust my needle nose down a little bit further, so that way I kind of bring the end back in so I can fit it into the throttle. Okay. Now that I got it all bunched back together, I take it down to my throttle, and then what I do is I take my flathead screwdriver and kind of push the rest of the frayed bits as much as I can back into the throttle. Sometimes it does take a couple of tries to get this right. So, trick is just being patient with it, and it'll come. Being a little difficult with me. Thinking that the screw might be holding me up a little bit, so I'm going to go ahead and remove the screw completely. I'm not going to remove it all the way. Just make sure it's all the way past your hole. Alright. I just got to twist this throttle cable back up a little bit more. And while you're twisting, give it a little pull so that way you don't have it knot and then you'll never be able to get it fit in. Finally going back in. The key is to make sure that you start your throttle cable back on into the housing before you pull it all the way through. If you don't, you have to do it all over again. How about you guys? I'm not looking forward to having to do that again. Sometimes this is a little bit tricky. You can see it's taking me almost as long to just thread this throttle cable back in, as it's taking me to do the whole rest of the job. Under normal circumstances, I would be just replacing the throttle cable because it's frayed, but just for this instructional, I'm not going to do that. I hope. Okay. Then all you have to do, tighten up the cable, make sure that your throttle is adjusted properly, tighten up the cable retaining screw, and put your air cleaner back on. And that's how you rebuild your carburetor on your outboard. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and remember, if you're in the Southeast Florida area and you'd like to get some work done on your boat, let us know. Give us a call. Remember, if you like the video as well, like us, and we will be happy to post more videos on more repairs. Thank you.